of PGSS. So PGSS is a postgraduate student association. We have a lot of programming. This is our home away from home for a lot of IPN students. So I'm very happy to share this with you. I think later we're going to be joined by Max. He's one of my officers, and he's a Canadian and native Montrealer. So that way you get both perspectives of how it works being an IPN student, how GSAN works, or if you want to ask us any questions. I'm going to run through most of our programming just to like advertise and show you that we are friendly people. But also to give you like a student perspective of how, like, what we do besides being in our labs all day. And afterwards, I'm just going to open it up to questions. I remember how it was applying for graduate school. So any questions you guys might have from like current students, I would be happy to take them, and Max as well. So also, if you ever want to interrupt me or like raise hands or put it in the chat, then feel free to do it. And yeah, so let's get started. First of all, oh, I forgot this has this is animations. Okay, so what we do, we provide events and resources for the student body. It's not limited to IPN students, but because most of our events are directed to that population, that's who we target. We focus on academic, social sustainability, wellness, and advocacy domains. We do this through communication. So we communicate those events. We also bring that information to students, and we also fund and subsidize all these initiatives. So we do get funds from some of the fees that as a student we pay to McGill. It goes to PGSS, which is our big umbrella for graduate students, and then it comes to us. So we're able to bring all this programming for the most part free at the time because it's part of your student fees. So that's why we always encourage students to come, because if you're already paying for it, then might as well take advantage. And ultimately, our goal is to like enrich student experiences and provide a platform for leadership and growth. This is a good opportunity for current students to first find each other. A lot of times when you're working in a lab, you're doing bench work. I work in a computational lab. So half the time I don't see anyone in the lab. Which means that to find each other, to find other people, it's really nice to have a platform like this. And also, if you're interested in leadership, you're interested in expanding your skill set, you can use GSAN as a platform for that. We have academic initiatives. This is my domain. I'm the VP of Academic Affairs. These are some of the events that we've carried out. So we carry it out, sorry. We have an orientation at the beginning of each semester. It's just a very brief, it's similar to this, just a little more specific to these dates we're having these events. Also more questions about like, how does a program work, which I'm sure you've seen before. We also have events on researching yourself, doing individual development. What are your values? What are your goals long term? So we had a really cool event a couple weeks ago called Imagine Your Future, to try to expand or think about what you're going to do during your degree, but also after that. We're having a nice event next week. It's a technique roundtable. This time we're focusing on rodents. So we want students, but also other people, all interested parties, honestly, to learn about the different techniques that we carry out. Also to know what other people might be using a technique that you are using yourself. Like I said, it can be very easy to get like very focused on your work. And a lot of times it's nice to have those different perspectives from other labs. We're also having an event at the end of March, I believe, called Kickstarting Your Job Search. So thinking again about that future, like how to convert an academic CV to a resume, things like that. We will also be carrying out a programming bootcamp. So a 3-hour affair to just get things started when it comes to programming. It's a very valued skill. inside and outside of academia. So anything we can do to bring it closer to students, then it's welcome. We also have discussion groups, we have mentoring programs, and all of these change from year to year. It really depends on the orientation of the VP academic, but it gives you an idea of more or less what we offer and what we can do. We also have social initiatives for anyone that's more on like the Let's Party scene. We have virtual and in-person events. Most of our events right now are in person, but we were able to adapt when it came to the pandemic. So some examples of the events we've carried out. We always have a fall barbecue. It's one of our most popular events because when you start at IPN, again, you want to meet more people. You get to meet people from your cohort, from other cohorts. So just being able to have that sense of coming back after summer as well, it's very nice. There's also Happy Fridays and Happy Hour. There's different bars. Montreal has an amazing nightlife, so being able to take advantage of that is also pretty sweet. We also hold a formal gala, which should be coming up in a couple months for us, but also the more casual events. So there's movie nights, there's cookie decorating, there's a Among Us tournament at some point. So we just like keeping it light, like I said. In addition to that, we also care about student wellness. There's a very high degree of burnout and stress that comes associated with a graduate program. So again, we have virtual and in-person wellness events. These are some of the pictures from this year or so from the events that we've had. We have advocacy officers, but we also carry out a lot of programming to help to like foster wellness. This includes wellness walks. We had one at Mont Royal that was very sweet. We also had banana bread, which was delicious. We have intramural sports. I think it's football and volleyball for the time being. There's a bunch of team activities. So for instance, you can see the picture of the boat there. We entered a dragon boat tournament. And honestly, again, a lot of these, it depends on what the VP wellness wants to focus on or the projects that they want to include. But it gives you an idea of more or less, how we can support you or what type of things we do at GSAN. Finally, we also have sustainability initiatives. We're part of the Green Labs initiative. Just if anyone has worked in the wet lab before, there's a lot of plastic waste. So it is a project started by McGill students to take care of that, to be able to reduce it and be more sustainable and conscious when it comes to lab waste. Finally, I think this is the part that applies to most of everyone in this call. We do have resources for new and international students. We have a lot of people from all over the world. McGill is highly international. But because of that, it's really nice to be able to like talk to someone that might be going through something similar or went through something similar before. So we do have a buddy program that matches incoming students, may that be international or not, to someone that has been at IPN longer than they have. We are also operating essentially as a help desk. So if you have any questions for IPN or for student life, you can contact us. There's also workshops and information sessions that ISS, the International Student Society, I want to say. There's a lot of acronyms in McGill, and I think we get very used to just using the acronym. So a lot of how to survive the winter and how to like going to different places, how to improve wellness, how to work on your visa, how to renew your student permit. So things like that, ISS will definitely help us with. And finally, we produced, this year is the first year, an onboarding booklet. So I think it's something like a 30-page thing with a lot of information about what to expect, how to navigate funding, what are the nice places to go around town, as well as the different parts and milestones of being part of IPN. That being said, like I mentioned earlier, it's a great place to try out new skills and competencies. We do have a blog. We also have a project of interviewing, and all these posters that you've seen have been designed by our students. So if you're interested in technical writing or blog writing, graphic design, scientific journalism, website management, also budget management, like if you're more into the operations side of things, it's I think it's a really cool opportunity. Yeah, and it's also nice because you get to like give back to the community. So just so you know, we have an executive team. So GSAN in total has approximately 30 to 35 members. IPN is a big program. So in order to bring all this programming to students, we do need a big team. So this is us. We're divided into the different domains I described earlier. So we have a VP Social, VP Wellness, VP Academic. And I'm sure if you have any questions about anything, we'd all be happy to answer them. And other than that, yeah, you can also follow us on socials. We have a website, and I'd be happy to just take any questions or explain anything further if there's anything you want to ask. I see also Max has joined. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I joined in a little late because yeah, experiments, brain stuff. So hi, I'm Max. I'm a GSAN social officer, so I'm pretty much helping out the wonderful lady Laura Isabella, who's given the talk to you today. Much what I'm doing. You'll see me around quite often. Second year master's student, working in the lab of Dr. Wei Shang Huang at the Montreal General Hospital, doing a lot of wet lab work, a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, that's me.
There we go. I should probably say what I research. I'm actually at Douglas. I'm a second year. I was a rotation student. So I'm like a weird second year. That's actually a first year student. I research functional genomics and genetic susceptibility or resilience to psychiatric conditions. So yeah, and my lab is the Silveira Mini Lab. So that's where you'll find me. But yeah, so does anyone have any questions? How many people are terrified? Are you able to provide a link to the onboarding booklet? Yes, I don't have it on me now, but I can definitely ask Adriana to forward it after the session. It has all the information that's on the website. It's just more colorful and friendly. I think that was like our target for it. And it includes a little bit more on like the funding information. Wow, all the awkwardness. I'm loving this.
Don't be shy. I rushed to consume caffeine before this meeting, so I'm ready for questions.
He's wired. I don't drink coffee, but I think that's a norm for most graduate students.
Well, hi. Thank you both for putting on this presentation. And maybe this has been covered in different kinds of talks before. I haven't been able to join. But I was curious as an international student, what kind of process might I expect in trying to find housing around McGill?
I'm actually at my second house moving this year. It's thrilling. I think, well, actually, Max, you're like born and raised here. You know this better than I do.
I mean, I don't have to really partake in housing, so I guess that's the benefit of being a Montreal kid. So I can't really, attest to what kind of a process that's like because I haven't really gone through it as much.
Well, that's so
I do
sad.
have a nice 1 hour commute though, coming from the South Shore. that you'd probably have less if you were on in the housing on campus. But
I had forgotten that you lived in the middle of nowhere. Okay, then yeah, I'm more qualified for this. I am very lazy and don't want to commute. Like my rule tends to be like 30 minutes or less.
If I can make a suggestion, if you're on Facebook, there is a few Facebook groups you can join. I think there's one that's specifically dedicated to lease transfers, which are usually your best bet if you want to get an apartment in Montreal at a low rate. I think there's a group called Montreal Lease Transfers or something.
Yeah.
And there's also some McGill related housing groups as well, but definitely find yourself in those groups. They're usually quite helpful. People are often moving all the time.
Yeah. Montreal has like an official moving date, which is July 1st. That is when a lot of people move, most of the city moves. Out of those dates, you can find housing directly from landlords, or you can find a lease transfer. Lease transfers tend to be cheaper just because you're essentially getting the contract from someone else, right? So, yeah.
that said, I also have a lot of my colleagues at the lab who preferred getting an apartment somewhere else in Montreal as opposed to the housing on campus. There's a lot of great places to be in Montreal. I know friends who live, in the village on the plateau. Given the fact that you have the metro that can take you very close to wherever you need to be, I'd say, you have the option to go pretty much wherever you'd like. And, maybe top out at about 30 minutes of public transit.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely be for the price that student housing goes to, because that's what I did. I arrived and I got student housing, and then I was like, okay, no, I'm seeing nicer apartments for the same price. Then I think it's nice to have the off campus, also because a lot of student housing is essentially tailored for undergrads. And yeah, that's not the kind of life I lead.
I think there are a few questions in the chat, and since we have about
Yes.
20 minutes, I should probably.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so what type of psychiatric conditions you work on? I'm assuming that one's for me. So right now we're focusing on emotion regulation disorders. So that would include addictions. So I work on big cohorts, so it's a lot of substance use disorders, but also mood disorders, so depression and bipolar. So those are the ones that I'm working on for the time being. Yeah. What do you think makes a successful IPN student versus one that's not? Max.
I'm trying to think of like how we could narrow it down quite well. I think definitely someone who is really interested in what they're doing. I think that if you're, given a project and you don't necessarily click with it and you find it a lot of, tedious work, it might not give you that kind of discipline to keep coming and doing the work. So I think finding a project that truly kind of relates to you on some sort of level is definitely something you're looking for. Having a good lab environment is definitely something to look out for as well. I've seen cases where, you get along very well with your lab mates. And I'll kind of segue that into the following question, which is, does the lab provide technical training? Because a lot of the times you're going to be learning from your peers in the lab. You're not going to have, necessarily a specialist or technician coming in to teach you how to do everything. You're going to be learning from, postdocs, PhD students, other master's students in the labs. I, as a master's student, was able to train undergrads and even a PhD and master's student as well when they came in. So finding yourself a good lab environment where everyone kind of works together and helps each other out is definitely something else to look out for. That's not to say you can't really do it without the assistance, but it definitely makes things a lot easier. I think looking at science as something that you can communicate with a bunch of people is the best way to learn, because you might think of something one way, but then someone might think of something a whole other way, which solves whatever potential problems you could be facing. And then I'd say like having good relations with everyone, and definitely finding a good school and life balance. there are times where you're going to be coming in, most likely on weekends, to do work, given the situation. But don't think that you're expected to be doing that all the time. Make sure you have the time to, be around Montreal, be with family, be with friends. Don't give, 100% of your time to the lab. Make sure you have enough time for yourself so that you can kind of balance out your life as best you can. And I think off the top of my head, that's probably
wise words. That was very off the top of your head. Nice. I'm so glad I sent it over to you because that was very thorough. Thank you. I definitely second the work-life balance part. Also, I would put a little bit of a caveat on the whole, like, make sure you love your project, because
make sure you like it. Make sure it's
you
interesting
like it
enough.
exactly. Make sure you don't
it's interesting enough that you're willing to come in and do the work.
Yeah, and read the literature. Because I think you can compensate. It's a lot easier to compensate a topic that you're not a super fan of with a nice lab environment than it is to compensate a terrible lab environment with a topic you love. But yeah, successful IPN students, honestly, like, take charge of your own life. A lot of times it will be very tempting to be like, I'm going to spend every waking moment on my research, but yeah, make sure you stop and smell the roses. That's what keeps us going. And for does the lab provide technical training? It really depends on the lab, like Max said. A lot of times it's postdocs that are teaching you. Also, you are not expected, or most PIs do not expect you to know everything when you arrive. And even if you have worked with the same technique before, a lot of labs have very specific ways about it. So you're definitely going to be learning. Yeah. So it really depends. Most PIs are very open to you having to grow, right? Like, that's why you're here. That being said, it can be easier in some labs than others. Like, some labs have a ton of postdocs or a lot of senior students, and others are very new. So yeah. Sorry, Max, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, also don't expect that you have to know everything within like the first week or two of you starting. Like, you're going to be new to the lab environment. It's normal to kind of take your time to learn how to do things properly. From my experience, I always found it, what worked best, at least for me, was to kind of solidify piece by piece different protocols or different, experimental procedures that you're going to be doing, rather than trying to memorize and do everything right after the first time you learn it. You might be capable of memorizing how to do it the first time, but I always found it better to ask the questions if ever you're unsure, because it's a lot easier to get that clarification before doing the experiment rather than trying to do it on your own because you feel pressured like you have to, and then wasting the resources and the lab material and the time to accidentally have made a mistake and then, kind of redo it. Also, don't be afraid to make mistakes as well. Like, you're not expected to be perfect right off the bat either. So, give yourself the time to learn is probably one of the main takeaways, I would say.
Yeah, I think when I joined, there was like, I knew that the first semester, it was like, I'm absolutely useless. I'm still learning half of this. Especially coming from a psychology training into a functional genomics lab. It was like, yep, what is this word? So yeah, definitely, it's a good place to learn. Like I said, it's why we're here.
Yeah.
I think we have a couple more questions on how to find a PI. So I think, Adriana, one of those might be easier for you. So if we're not able to find a PI during the application process, does IPN have a system in place for pairing incoming students with labs that are looking to take on students? And
I might not be necessarily the best person to answer this, but we did answer these questions during the staff Q&A that took place on Monday, and that recording will be uploaded, if not today, then early next week. Having said that, there isn't really like a system in place. Basically, your acceptance is more or less contingent on finding a supervisor, but there are ways to figure it out. However, I think it's best to reach out to the admissions coordinator for that.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, and as an international student, how do we find suitable labs and projects? Emails. It's very awkward to cold email people, but it's a necessary evil sometimes. A lot of times you can also connect through their graduate students as well. So if you're like, well, this person has published this paper, this is a PI, and this is their graduate student, you can connect that way. Yeah, I was a rotation student, so I actually didn't have a lab when I arrived. But from everyone else I know, it was cold emails, honestly. Yeah, so next question. What are things you wish you knew or did before the start of a graduate degree? This is a hard one because I'm an old PhD student. Max is making a face. I know, it is so good. But no, I took like 2 years breaks between my previous degrees. So I taught undergrad. I was also able to focus on research. So I did a lot of things to make sure that this is what I wanted to do. And this is what was needed or useful for a career that I want to build. So I think that would be my biggest thing. It's like, make sure that this is something that you want to do. And it's not, well, I got offered a position, so might as well, or I don't know what else to do, especially when it comes to PhDs. Do you have an answer for that one, Max?
Off the top of my head, I'd probably say projects tend to change. So I know, at least in my experience, I think my project has changed at least a proper 2 to 3 times in terms of kind of the layout of what we wanted to do. The original project I wanted to work on ended up not working out after 6 months, and we had to come up with a new approach. So I think one thing for sure would be it is research, and you have to understand that just because you may have a good hypothesis or good kind of basis for your project doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to follow through the way you expect them to. You also have to understand, like, you are doing new research. This is new. The reason why these things can change is because no one else has done it. You're the one doing it for the first time. So there's a lot of really cool kind of, pride that comes with that. It's like, oh, awesome, I'm doing something for the first time no one else has. But with that comes being a scientist and having that, potential. Well, that didn't go as expected. What's another plan we can have to kind of move forward? So with that said, don't panic, because it is a normal part of science. Things aren't always going to work out. And that just kind of helps, I think, moving forward with properly kind of adjusting the project to get the best kind of outcome from it. So, be expected that could happen.
Yeah, I just thought of something else as well, and like something that catches a lot of people by surprise, and it is like, know your financial situation before joining a graduate program. We are paid stipends. That being said, just because we're students, it's not massive. So it is an investment. I personally think of it that way. Like, you're investing time and essentially a pay cut for your future. So be aware of that before just jumping in head first. If that is something that you think could affect your decision-making process. Yeah, we've got a little bit over 5 minutes. What do you think would be the best approach to get to know your supervisor if you're not in Montreal? Like I said, cold emailing. just email them randomly. I think a good recommendation as well would be to talk to their graduate students because they know how the lab works better than, like, the PI is going to sell you the project, right? But a graduate student, a current graduate student is able to tell you, yeah, I mean, we all want to leave. This is terrible. Please don't do this to yourself. Or I love this place. Our PI is super supportive. He is always encouraging us to do new things. Or, yeah, like we don't really get along with our PI, but the lab environment is great. And I've heard all of these from graduate students. So I think that's a good way to gauge whether you want to join that lab or not. Like approach the supervisor, yeah, but also if you like the project, also talk to the graduate students.
I'm gonna stop recording very shortly just because I will need to jump on to start the next session with the Wellness Hub, which is in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll stop recording and I'll leave you to wrap it up, and I will have this recording uploaded by next week. So
nice. Thanks for setting this up for everyone.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.